At a time when the issue of intensive farming is increasingly debated, we need to find a new solution to feed humankind. As the population continues to grow faster and faster, we have to stop eating food coming from the other side of the world that waste huge quantity of water and deplete the soil. Hopefully, solutions exist, such as aquaponics. And no, it's not what you think. Aquaponics is a system to grow fish and plants in a symbiotic environment. Fishes are raised in a classic aquatic environment, and plants are cultivated in hydroponics, which is a method to growing plants without soil but only water and minerals. It was first used by the Chinese in the 6th century, then by the Aztecs and many other nations. It is reused these last years because it is a very efficient way to make food that is eco-friendly. First, we'll see the history of aquaponics, then we'll move on the modern use of aquaponics, and finally we'll see a concrete example of use of this technology with a company in the USA. As I said, the first one to use aquaponics were the Chinese. It is hard to estimate when they began to use it, but we know for sure that this culminated in the 6th century. They used it to grow rice. This system has a beautifully simple elegance. They used rice, ducks and fishes, most commonly eel, to create their aquaponics. Ducks in the rice puddles were eating insects, pets and small fishes. After digesting them, nutrients were released in their wastes and ate by the fishes. The fish's waste was broken down by bacteria and then eaten by the rice plants. Thanks to this rich water full of nutrients, rice was growing very fast. It allowed the Chinese people to grow rice easily because ducks were cleaning the cultures. Moreover, the aquaponics gave to the people not only rice but also fishes and ducks. As we can see, aquaponics is the reflection of the relationship between plants and animals in nature. That is why we find it in many other cultures in history. As another example, let's talk about the Aztecs. Where the Chinese people used aquaponics to improve their rice cultures, the Aztecs used it by necessity. Indeed, the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, was surrounded by swampland. Therefore, they couldn't grow any food around the city. The land around the capital was useless to normal farming. That is why they were forced to improvise to adapt and to overcome the situation. To do so, Aztecs built large artificial islands with plants, mud and reeds. Those islands are called chinampas. Some of the islands were fixed, but other ones were movable like big boats. Maize and beans were planted on the islands, making the previous useless lake and swampland a fertile land where they can grow a huge quantity of plants. They took benefit from the fish waste to help the culture to grow bigger and faster. Unfortunately, during the Spanish conquest of Mexico, Aztecs were killed or forced to leave the biggest cities, so most of the chinampas were abandoned and the technology was lost. Now let's see a modern use of aquaponics. So in 1969, the New Alchemy Institute was founded by John Todd, Nancy Todd and William McLarney. This foundation was conducted research into food, but also water, energy and shelter, on behalf of the people and the planet. The founders built huge shelter known as the Arcs, in Canada and the United States. These were self-contained ecosystems and the animal, insects plants, and even the soil were carefully planned to minimize the need of external inputs. First, the system was not really efficient because the quality of the water in the fish tanks would deteriorate quickly. It required regular cleaning and replacement of the water, so it wasn't really a safe contained environment. To face this issue, plants were added to the system just to clean the water for the fishes. It was the first modern and mainstream use of aquaponics. In the 80s, Dr. McMurtry and Professor Sanders from the North Carolina State University continued the work from the New Alchemy Institute. They introduced separated grow beds, one of the most used technologies in the futuristic farms nowadays. Also, Dr. McMurtry popularized the use of tilapia, which is still the most widely used fish in aquaponics today. The work of the scientists has resulted in what is probably the first closed-loop aquaponics systems, meaning that it did not really rely on external factors to function. Also, technically, fish food was required. After that, aquaponics took off as both an hobby and a commercial force. Australia was the first real hotbed of innovation, with websites such as Backyard Aquaponics, allowing for sharing of ideas and research through open forums. The fire quickly spread to the USA, where similar websites and communities formed and began to share and develop ideas together. Since the mid-2000s, aquaponics has spread all over the world and is widely considered, along with vertical farming techniques, to be the future of food production. Sustainable food projects all over the world are currently engaged in creating a better future for families and communities in developing countries, and at the other end of the spectrum, millions of dollars are made everywhere through this commercial aquaponics. This technology helps us to respond to many problems, such as population growth and limited farmland, demand for local food, increasing cost of water and energy, and finally, climate change. Now that we see that where this technology came from and why it is used, let's see how it works. Now that we all understood what is aquaponics, let's see a concrete application and a use of it. Edenwork is a young American company created by 3 under 30 engineers. Based in the US, they plan to expand to many big cities where there is a huge density of population in order to produce the food locally. The creator of the company came all from the industry sector. They want to apply all they learn in the world of industry to the food production. That is why they chose aquaponics. It is highly automatable and industrializable. Jason Green, the co-founder and CEO of Edenworks, explained in an article that Toyota became the most valuable automaker by improving its manufacturing. Put simply, while US automakers like GM built a different production line for each model, or shut down existing production lines to retool for different models, Toyota created a single production line that could make any mix of their models in a given day.
The history of manufacturing is how can I create as simple a process as possible, take 2 things, smush them together, I've got my widget. But if you're trying to manufacture life, there's just a huge amount of complexity that's evolved over literally millions of years, if not longer. Using ecosystems for manufacturing is a total paradigm shift. Edenworks is creating a new kind of manufacturing, one that's optimized to grow living things rather than making widgets.
Therefore, Jason Green and his team spend many time studying how plants are growing and tried to apply lean manufacturing technologies in food production. This resulted in a lot of wonderful futuristic projects such as this one, FarmLab. It is basically a rooftop aquaponic farm. At the bottom of the tiered stacks are tilapia-filled fish tanks, which provide the water and nutrients for the garden's produce. As the water is carried up to the top of the stacks, it is filtered, breaking down by bacteria into fertilizer, and then is feeding the plants in the process. The beds then emit clean water that is pumped back into the fish tanks below, where the process begins again. The beauty of this farm is, as you can imagine, that it can be located in the heart of any city in the world.